After they humiliated him in public, they never imagined who he really was. They laughed because he was quiet. They mocked him because he looked ordinary. What they didn't know was that the man they dismissed was about to decide their future. Naomi Keller moved fast. Fast deals. Fast meetings. Fast judgments. She was respected, and she expected the world to keep up. Drivers, assistants, waiters, they were background. Necessary. Replaceable. Invisible threads in the fabric of her success. She didn't see herself as cruel, just efficient. Time was currency and she spent it carefully. On people who mattered. On deals that moved. On conversations that built empires. Everyone else was friction. Friction slowed things down. And Naomi Keller didn't do slow. Her colleagues admired her focus. Her board valued her results. Her competitors feared her precision. But the people who served her coffee, carried her bags, drove her to meetings, they had a different view. Not that she ever asked. Victor Hale had been driving her for weeks. Quiet, polite, invisible. Exactly how she liked it. He arrived on time every morning. 5:55 without fail. Never complained about the routes she demanded. Never asked questions. Never made small talk. Never tried to fill the silence with weather observations or traffic commentary. To Naomi he was perfect because he knew his place. She never asked his name the first week. The agency had sent him. That was enough. He opened doors. He carried bags when she allowed it. He waited in silence while she took calls. Sometimes for 30 minutes in parking lots. In her world that was excellence. Victor never minded. He had learned long ago that people revealed themselves. Not in what they said to equals, but in how they spoke to those they considered beneath them. And Naomi revealed everything. The way she answered her phone while he held the door. The way she never said thank you. The way she spoke about these people. When referring to anyone in a service role. It wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was just a tone. A sigh. An eye roll she thought he couldn't see in the rearview mirror. But Victor saw everything. Because that was the point. Traffic was bad that morning. The kind that turns a 20-minute drive into 50. Naomi checked her watch. Once. Twice. 3 times in 2 minutes. Her jaw tightened. Her fingers drummed against her leather portfolio. The sound filled the car like a countdown. You people never know where you're going, she said flatly. Not shouting. Not even particularly emotional. Just stating what she believed was fact. Victor didn't respond. His eyes stayed on the road. His hands steady on the wheel. 10 and 2, exactly as they had been for the past 40 minutes. She sighed. Audibly. Performatively. The kind of sigh designed to communicate disappointment. Without requiring actual confrontation. If I miss this meeting, it's on you. Her tone wasn't angry. It was something worse. Dismissive. Final. The voice of someone assigning blame. Before the outcome had even arrived. Victor nodded calmly. Yes, ma'am. His voice was even. No defensiveness. No apology. Just acknowledgement. Naomi turned back to her phone. The comment already forgotten. Another piece of background noise. In a life that moved too fast to remember small cruelties. She scrolled through emails. Responded to 3. Deleted 7. The traffic hadn't moved. This is ridiculous, she muttered. Victor said nothing. What she didn't notice was the GPS on his phone. The one showing that he had, in fact, taken the fastest route available. That the traffic was caused by an accident 2 miles ahead. That no route would have avoided it. That he had left 15 minutes earlier than usual. Specifically to buffer for unpredictability. She didn't notice because she didn't ask. And Victor didn't explain. Because explanations required respect. And respect required seeing him as human. What she didn't know was that Victor never reacted to disrespect. He cataloged it. Not out of spite. Not for revenge. But because he had learned that character. Real character showed itself in unguarded moments. When people thought their words carried no weight, that's when the truth came out. And Naomi's truth was becoming very clear. This wasn't the first comment. 2 weeks earlier, she had snapped at him for taking a route that avoided construction, even though it saved 10 minutes. "I didn't ask for the scenic route," she had said coldly. He had been saving her time. She had been asserting control. Last week, she had forgotten her briefcase. When he reminded her, she blamed him for not checking. "That's your job," she had said. "To anticipate what I need." Never mind that he was a driver, not a mind reader. Small moments, forgettable to her, recorded by him. Not because he was petty, but because he had decisions to make. Important ones. Ones that would affect hundreds of employees, millions of dollars, the trajectory of companies. And those decisions required data. Real data. Not the polished version people presented in boardrooms, but the unfiltered truth that emerged when they thought no one important was listening. Victor had 3 weeks of data now, and the pattern was clear. Naomi's company was desperate. The kind of desperate that doesn't show in quarterly reports yet, but lives in the CEO's sleepless nights. One deal would save them. One partner. One investment that could stabilize everything they had spent a decade building. The meeting today would decide everything. Hale Ventures. The name alone carried weight. They didn't just invest money. They invested credibility. Their backing meant access to networks, strategic partnerships, the kind of doors that stayed closed to everyone else. Landing them would change everything. Victor dropped her off at the high-rise. Glass and steel. 30 stories of ambition reaching toward a sky that promised everything and guaranteed nothing. "Wait here," she said sharply. Not a request. A command. Victor nodded. "Of course." She walked toward the entrance without looking back. Heels clicking with confidence she had practiced for years. Each step a declaration. "I belong here. I've earned this. I will win this." Victor watched her go. Then he checked his watch. 15 minutes. Enough time. He drove around the corner. Parked in the underground executive garage. The one with his name on the reserved sign. Space E7. Reserved for V. Hale. He removed his driver's cap. Straightened his tie. Put on the jacket that had been hanging in the back seat, protected by a garment bag she had never noticed. He checked his reflection in the side mirror. Not a driver anymore. Because he was attending the same meeting. Just through a different door. Victor Hale wasn't just a driver. He was the founder and managing partner of Hale Ventures, a firm that invested in mid-sized companies on the edge of breakthrough or breakdown. He had built his reputation on something unusual. He didn't just review financials. He reviewed people. Numbers could be managed, projected, optimized on paper. But people revealed the truth. And his method was unconventional. Before every major deal, Victor went undercover. Sometimes as a driver. Sometimes as a consultant. Sometimes as a contractor doing maintenance work. He wanted to see how companies treated people when they thought no one important was watching. Because in his experience, how a company treated the invisible predicted how they would treat everyone when the pressure arrived. And pressure always arrived. Naomi's company had passed the financial review. The numbers worked. The market position was strong. The product had potential. But Victor had wanted to see one more thing. The culture. The leadership. The character. So he had spent 3 weeks driving their COO. Listening. Observing. Cataloging. And now he had his answer. The kind of answer that couldn't be found in spreadsheets. Naomi pitched perfectly. Charts. Confidence. Control. The conference room was immaculate. 12 chairs around a table that reflected the ceiling lights. Like a dark mirror. Her team flanked her. CFO, legal counsel, product lead. Each one prepared. Rehearsed. Ready. The investors sat across. 3 of them. Professional. Attentive. non-committal. The kind of faces that gave nothing away. She had practiced this pitch for weeks. Every word measured. Every slide precise. Every transition smooth. Revenue projections. Market analysis. Competitive advantages. Growth trajectory. Was flawless. She was 7 minutes in when the door opened. Victor walked in. Not in a uniform. In a tailored suit. Charcoal gray. Perfectly fitted. The kind that costs 3 months of a driver's salary. The room shifted. Not loudly, but unmistakably. Naomi's breath caught. Her next sentence died in her throat. The slide behind her suddenly felt irrelevant. The lead investor stood. "Victor, good to see you." They shook hands. Not as equals. As old colleagues. As people who had done this dance many times before. "Traffic?" the investor asked with a slight smile. "Always," Victor replied calmly. Then he turned. And met Naomi's eyes. "Good morning, Miss Keller." His voice was the same. Calm. Even. Professional. But the context had changed everything. And just like that, the back seat became the head of the table. Naomi's CFO glanced at her. Confused. Concerned. Her legal counsel looked down at his notes. Suddenly very interested in contract language. He had already memorized. Her product lead shifted in his seat. The energy had changed. Everyone felt it. Victor took a seat. Not at the head of the table. But in the position that commanded it. The spot where everyone's attention naturally fell. "Please," he said gently. "Continue." It wasn't a request. It was a test. If you're still watching, you understand what this story is really about. These aren't billionaire stories. They're behavior stories. Subscribe quietly if you value calm storytelling with real consequences. This channel is for people like you. Naomi couldn't focus. Every word she had spoken replayed in her head. In the car. In the elevator. In moments she thought were private. "You people never know where you're going. If I miss this meeting, it's on you. I didn't ask for the scenic route. That's your job." Each comment had felt insignificant in the moment. Background noise in a busy life. Now they felt like evidence. Victor listened. Not coldly. Not kindly. Objectively. He took notes. Asked clarifying questions about revenue. Nodded when her CFO explained market projections. Smiled slightly when her product lead demonstrated their software. But his presence changed everything. Naomi stumbled once. Repeated herself twice. Lost her place on slide 14. Her team noticed. The other investors noticed. And Victor noticed that they noticed. Because power without emotion doesn't need revenge. It just withdraws opportunity. Quietly. Completely. Permanently. The room settled into an uncomfortable stillness. Naomi avoided Victor's eyes. She had spoken to him dozens of times. But never to him. Now every word returned with precision. Each casual dismissal. Each impatient command. Each moment she had treated him like furniture. That occasionally required instructions. Victor folded his hands calmly. "Let's continue," he said. The meeting obeyed him instantly. That's when Naomi understood something terrifying. This wasn't coincidence. This was consequence. He had chosen to be her driver. Not because he needed the work. Not because he was desperate. Not because it was a stepping stone to something better. But because he needed the information. And she had given him everything. Her CFO tried to salvage the pitch. He emphasized their growth metrics. Their customer retention. Their competitive advantages. Their plan for scaling. Was good. Solid. Professional. The kind of pitch that would work. In any other room. With any other audience. But everyone in the room knew. That numbers weren't the problem anymore. Victor asked about company culture. About employee satisfaction metrics. About turnover in support roles. About how decisions were made. When leadership was under pressure. Questions that seemed tangential. But weren't. Questions that revealed he had been paying attention to things most investors never considered. Naomi's legal counsel answered carefully. He sensed the minefield, each word chosen with precision. Victor nodded, wrote something down, moved on. But the weight remained. Heavy. Undeniable. Unspoken but understood by everyone present. Naomi finished her pitch. Her voice didn't shake, but her certainty did. Victor asked questions. Not aggressive. Not personal. But exact. How does your company handle internal feedback? He asked. Particularly from staff in operational roles? Naomi's throat felt dry. We have standard channels. And do those channels produce action? Victor continued. Or just documentation? Her CFO jumped in. We take all feedback seriously. Victor smiled slightly. I'm sure you document it seriously, he said. I asked about action. The distinction landed like a weight. Each question exposed a weakness she had ignored for months. Not in the business model. In the leadership model. Tell me about your last 3 operational hires, Victor said. How long did they stay? Naomi's product lead answered. Average tenure is 18 months. Industry average is 32, Victor replied without checking notes. Why the gap? Silence. He wasn't humiliating her. He was evaluating her. And that felt worse. Because humiliation ends. Evaluation leads to judgment. And judgment leads to decisions. Permanent ones. At the end, Victor spoke once more. I believe in second chances, he said calmly. But not in patterns. The words landed softly. And hit hard. Naomi swallowed. I wasn't aware, she began. Victor raised a hand gently. Not dismissive. Just clear. You were aware, he said. You just didn't think it mattered. Silence followed. The kind that makes people check their phones. Adjust their papers. Look anywhere but at each other. Victor continued. In my experience, how leaders treat people, when they believe there are no consequences, is the most accurate predictor of how they'll lead. When real pressure arrives. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even disappointed. He was simply stating an assessment. Based on data. Based on observation. Based on 3 weeks of evidence. She had provided willingly. And pressure always arrives, he said. Markets shift. Products fail. Competitors adapt. And when that happens, companies don't fail because of bad strategy. They fail because of bad culture. And bad culture starts at the top. The other investors were listening carefully now. Not to the pitch. To Victor. Because he was giving them information. Worth more than any financial projection. Victor stood. I won't be moving forward with this deal, he said. Naomi's heart sank. Her CFO closed his laptop slowly. Legal counsel began gathering papers. Then Victor added. But another firm in this room will. Confusion spread. One of the other investors sat forward. Victor. I'll be stepping back from the decision, Victor continued. I've seen enough to know this shouldn't be personal. He looked at Naomi not coldly. Clearly. The business model works. The financials are sound. The product has real potential. Someone should invest. He paused. But how you treat people when you think they can't affect you. That's not something I invest in. Not because I'm offended. But because it's predictive. The other investors exchanged glances. One of them, a woman named Sarah Amber, nodded slowly. She understood. Victor had just handed them information. Worth more than any due diligence report. Not because he wanted to sabotage Naomi. But because he believed in transparency. In his world, character data mattered. As much as financial data. Maybe more. And he had just provided both. I'll share my notes with anyone interested, Victor said. Full observations. 3 weeks of data. Make your own decisions. He gathered his materials. Shook hands with the other investors. Nodded politely to Naomi's team. Then he stopped at the door. "Miss Keller," he said, "I hope your company succeeds. I really do. But success built on a foundation of disrespect doesn't last. It just gets bigger before it falls." Then he left. Quietly. Completely. The way he had driven her for 3 weeks. Present but invisible. Until the moment it mattered most. Naomi's company survived. Barely. Sarah Amber's firm offered terms. Harsher than Hale Ventures would have provided. More oversight. Less autonomy. Quarterly behavioral reviews for leadership. Mandatory culture assessments. External HR audits. The board wasn't happy. Naomi's CEO was furious. But they had no choice. She signed. The investment saved them. But it cost Naomi something else. Her reputation. Word spread in investor circles. Not loudly, but effectively. Victor Hale had walked away. And Victor Hale didn't walk away from good deals. Which meant the deal wasn't as good as it looked. But something else didn't survive. Her certainty. The belief that how she treated people in private stayed private. That her words to drivers, assistants, waitstaff evaporated into irrelevance. She changed drivers the next week. Then assistants the week after. Then how she spoke. Not out of fear. Out of awareness. Because respect had cost her something real. Money. Control. Reputation. Opportunity. She attended a leadership seminar 6 months later. The instructor asked, "When do you show your true character?" Someone said, "Under pressure." Someone else said, "In crisis." Naomi raised her hand. "When you think no one important is watching." The instructor smiled. "That's the real answer." Naomi didn't smile back. She had learned it the expensive way. The kind of lesson that changes you. Because it costs you something. You can't get back. Victor never corrected her in the car. Not because he lacked confidence. Not because he feared confrontation. Not because he didn't deserve respect. But because he believed something simple. Character reveals itself best when it thinks no one important is watching. If he had introduced himself on day one, Naomi would have performed, smiled, been polite, said all the right things. And he would have learned nothing. She would have shown him the version of herself she wanted him to see. The professional. The leader. The person worthy of investment. So he stayed quiet. Observed. Cataloged. And when the moment came to decide, he had the data he needed. Not about her company. About her. Because in Victor's experience, companies didn't fail because of bad business models. They failed because of bad leadership. And bad leadership always started with how people treated those who couldn't fight back. The driver who couldn't argue. The assistant who needed the job. The waiter who depended on tips. Those were the moments that mattered. Not the performance in boardrooms. But the truth in parking lots. Unaware the driver she insulted controlled the deal that could save her company. Naomi learned a lesson power can't teach. Respect isn't about rank. It's about habit. The way you speak when no one's keeping score is the way you'll lead when everything's on the line. And someone is always keeping score. You just don't always know who they are. Until it's too late to change what they've seen. Power doesn't announce itself. It observes, remembers, it decides. And by the time you realize who had it, the decision has already been made. If you stayed till the end, you understand stories that don't rush. Subscribe if you believe. The strongest lessons arrive quietly. New stories like this every day.